What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another late night in the BrewLab with me, Lone Fox, your brewmaster-in-chief. And tonight, in the BrewLab, we're doing a top 10 list. Top 10 my favorite cards from Wilds of Eldraine. And, everybody has this slightly different approach of how they do this. Actually what they personally think is going to be like the most broken, like meta defining cards and put those in a ranking. Other people just go by like top 10 sleepers, top 10, personal favorites, top 10 most, flavor wins, that kind of stuff. For my top 10 list, I'm going to go with like, it's a kind of a fusion of like cards I really like, and I hope they're as good as I think they are, but I'm not sure about it. And then it's also ones that I'm like 99.9% sure are going to be like absolutely meta defining, and then sprinkled with a couple of like janky ones that may or may not be hit and misses. And as I'm recording this, it is the eve before early access. I'm already downloading the VIP client, so the next content you will be seeing from me is, early access content. So stay tuned for that. But for today, as mentioned, we're going to be doing some top 10 lists. So without further ado, let's jump right into it, shall we? Starting off at the bottom of the list with the Spellscorn Coven. There's two cards in the set that are making a good impression of being a kind of fixed brazen borrower type of a vibe. This is clearly different in many ways, but this adventure, instant speed, called Take It Back, for 3 mana, return target spell to its owner's hand. I would like to just remind you all that Divide by Zero got banned in Standard. Yes, there was reasons behind that. It also had the learn lesson mechanic stapled onto it. But the fact that this is essentially Divide by Zero that's also stapled onto a fairly decently on curve, on rate body, that because, if it was just a 4 mana 2/3 flying, below rate. The fact that when it enters the battlefield, it forces the opponent to discard a card. And if you think about the play pattern, especially if you're on the draw, when the opponent casts their big old thing, it'll probably be the turn at which they've played their 5th land and they're going to cast their sweeper. And they'll also be quite low on cards in hand. So then you hold back Spellscorn Coven, you take it back, their sweeper, to their hand. The very next turn you untap, play it, and then force him to discard either it or the other important thing. They'll probably only have about 2 cards left in their hand. So it's just like it comes at a really good point in the match. And I think, honestly, this one isn't even too much of a sleeper. A lot of people are talking about it. I think it's going to end up being pretty defining as far as the meta is concerned if this fairy deck takes off. But perhaps even in not specifically fairy tribal, perhaps just in Dimir. So keep your eyes on the Spellscorn Coven coming in at place number 10. Next up, we got one of the ones that are definitely in the list as like my favorites, where I'm not sure if it's going to be crazy good, but I really hope that it is, because it's just exactly my type of card. I'm going to go straight away into my Selesnya Artifacts deck, and definitely like these decks that I'm going to be trying to brew, where we're fusing together a bit of artifacts and enchantment synergies, using stuff from Kamigawa, Neon Dynasty, and all of the, there's plenty of it actually. So I hope that this becomes a bit of a glue card in fusing artifacts and enchantments together. The reason for that is because, if you read it carefully, when one or more artifacts enter the battlefield under your control, you put 2 +1/+1 counters on Elvish Archivist. That's pretty ridiculous how quickly this thing can grow. And it's not a cast trigger, it's an enter the battlefield trigger. There's plenty of cards like, what's his name? The Ginger Brute but the green one, you know. Oh my goodness, why am I drawing a blank? There's a green new little ginger brute guy. He's like, it's one of the main arts from the set. He's like holding his candy canes and he's ready to fight all the candy monsters. And he is himself an artifact. And when he enters the battlefield, he makes a food token. So that's, you know, immediately going to put 2 +1/+1 counters on your Elvish Archivist. And if you like start your curve with something like Teething Wormlet or Skrelv, and then go into this guy, and then go into like a Patchwork Automaton or the aforementioned little gingerbread man, things can get pretty interesting pretty quickly in terms of power and toughness with regards to the Elvish Archivist. And if it was just that, it probably wouldn't even be rare, honestly, because we've got a card that does something quite similar to this already, which was the Selesnya Signpost uncommon from a few sets back. But the fact that it also triggers on enchantments, so whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. Suddenly, you know, there's also cards that, you know, are artifacts and then put a roll token, and the roll is an enchantment, and the you know, you can easily trigger both of these things every single turn is what I'm trying to get at, with the cards in the new set and already with some cards that are already in standard. So I really hope that this helps that deck become a thing, because it hasn't quite ever, it's like tier 3, and it would be nice if it just like went up a tier. I'm not saying like let's make Selesnya artifacts into like a top tier deck that like takes on something like mono red and whatnot, and at the top position in best of 1, but just bust it up, like buff it up one more tier, that if played well and you get a couple of those nice opening hands, then it like pops off really fun and nicely, and the, you know, card advantage grows bigger. Mwah! Can't stop gushing about the Elf Artificer. Stay tuned for early access content, because this is going in one of the first brews that I'm going to brew up and play on the event. Next up, at position number 3, we have Sir Ginger herself. The Meal Ender. Definitely going to go in the very same deck with the previous card, right? So 2 mana, 3/1. I can picture this being just so amazing in the games when mono black opponent plays Liliana, which has rapidly become like a huge thorn in my side. It's one of the cards that when I see hit the board, it's just like, roll my eyes. Oh my goodness, here we go again. Especially when I'm playing control, of course, because they get you to discard all your stuff, and it becomes hard to find an answer. Here is an answer. You're not going to be playing it in your control deck, but regardless, you know, they've just -2'd your previous creature. Now your board is empty. Holy cannoli! And unless you're playing mono red, it's very difficult to then like start to put down enough threats so that you'll be able to attack into Liliana and get rid of her. You know, I'm thinking even mono white, how much of a nightmare that card is. You top deck Sir Ginger, or you already have Sir Ginger in hand. Play Sir Ginger, it will have haste, trample, and hexproof, because the opponent at that point will be controlling a planeswalker. And then, you know, it's got this extra bit of text, which is also great. It's I've already thought of like 3 or 4 different ways to synergize with this. So, and whenever an artifact you control is put into a graveyard, so that means, for example, a blood token being activated, a food token being activated, you're just chump blocking with an artifact that you control, like something like iron, what's it called? Oh my goodness. The little 1/1 guy that when it dies, you put your counters on someone else. Like, endless options. Endless options. There's the unearth artifacts that you kind of want to chump block with and then cast them again from the graveyard or unearth them, like the Simeon guy that puts counters on things. Like, whew, I can imagine this getting pretty big pretty quickly. And the fact that it's also got the Scry one on top of that, and in a pinch you can sack it and gain life equal to its power, you know. So it's like this superfood, you know, get it bigger, get it bigger, get it bigger, and then at some point the opponent has the way to get rid of it. You just sack it and gain a bunch of life. I think it's really, really strong card, and this is coming in at place number 3 on my list for sure. Next up, this one not so many people are talking about, and this kind of like the Elven Artificer guy falls into that same category for me because I love me some Boros aggro. I've missed it ever since, you know, we lost that. There was a point at which that deck was just pumping when we still had Luminarch Ass Pirate in the format. We don't have that card, and then for whatever reason, I've tried rebuilding it with all sorts of like replacements for it, and it just never quite performed as well. And I think it's got more to do with the fact that there's cards like Sheoldred in the format than the fact that like the replacements that I've found for Luminarch Aspirant aren't good enough to, you know, make up the difference. I think if Boros aggro type things are going to be some kind of a force to be reckoned with in the meta going forward, then the Heartflame Duelist is going to be a part of that reason. Just really cool design. Like out of these 2-color adventure and creature combos, this rare in the cycle for the Boros combination is one that I'm very, very hyped about. The static piece of text there, instant and sorcery spells you control have lifelink, is just so good. I can imagine just setting up some crazy turns. I mean, I haven't started to break this card yet. I just like look at it and I like it. I have this gut feeling of like, this is going to be a doozy. And you know, the adventure isn't terrible. Honestly, think about it. 3 damage, any target. You're going to play 4 of these in that deck for sure. And I, for one, cannot freaking wait. Regardless of like what you do with it, it's just good. Like even just a 2-mana 3/1, that's the same stats as like Intrepid Adversary. There's a few of them that you would be playing in that deck anyway already that have that similar stat line. You know, very aggressive. You just want to attack. You're not blocking with this dude. And then the fact that you know, your lightning strikes now gain you 3 life is also just so damn nice. So can't wait to find a way to break this. I'm gonna be in the lab the moment that I get access to the VIP client, and this is like, if not the first, because I think Selesnya is gonna be where I'm gonna dip my toes in first. Then this will probably be the 2nd or 3rd deck that I start to brew around. So stay tuned for that. Number 5 on my list, one that also might surprise you, but I have a few good reasons for this. I may need to open up another browser to show you. The Spiteful Hexmage over here seems terrible at first because it's a 1-mana 3/2. Then when it enters the battlefield, you create a curse roll token and attach it to any creature you control. If you play this on turn 1, there is no other creature you control on the board, so the curse roll has to go on it, which means it'll be a 1/1. So a 1-mana 1/1, whoop-de-doo. But if on turn 2 you follow it up with Lord Skitter's Blessing, let me just pull it up here on a Lord Skitter's Blessing. Scryfall. When Lord Skitter's Blessing enters the battlefield, create a Wicked Roll token, attach it to target creature you control. Right? Whenever you're doing this roll swapping, you remove the previous roll, it goes into the graveyard, and you put the new roll on it. So now on turn 2, you've given it an extra +1/+1, and this is at the point at which it can attack. And, you know, you'll also be satisfying Lord Skitter's Blessing thing where, like, at the beginning of the next upkeep, you'll lose a life, draw an extra card. So, like, on turn 2, you're swinging for 4 damage, okay, off of your 1-drop. And you get to draw an extra card the following turn. And if your opponent removes the Spiteful Hexmage, at the very least, they'll take 1 damage because of the Wicked Roll that you put on it. So, whew, some kind of like mono black aggro roll tokens. You know, also there's like these cards. I've been mentioning it during the spoiler talk episodes that whenever an enchantment goes into the graveyard, you drain the opponent, you gain 2 life, they drain 2 life kind of thing. And there's a few different things that do similar effects just from the set alone. That makes me think that maybe some sort of like aggressively slanted, changing roles all the time on your creatures and draining the opponent every time you do, and then still having like enough power to get in for some damage. Maybe even Orzhov, because there's the guy that puts a roll every combat step, puts a roll on a different creature. It's getting my creative juices well and truly a-flowing, and I think Spiteful Hexmage like is an important piece of that puzzle. And it's nice to get a new rare 1-drop for black that isn't just the the sleeper. This is I think going to be pretty damn nice. I mean, honestly, right now there's just the Evolved Sleeper and the revealing curtains or whatever, the 0-4 menace that on turn 3 the opponent discards a card and draws a card. That are like rare 1-drops that are worth playing in black. So here's your new one, and I think it's a doozy, especially in that line I just mentioned. So stay tuned for this guy. Next up on my list, and we're getting now closer towards the top end of the list than we are to the bottom end, and this is where the list switches more into the like, I think these are like actually busted and not like I hope that they are, and I like them. I have a soft spot in my heart for Selesnya, stuff like that. It's more like these are going to be actually broken cards that are going to shape the format. IMO, of course. And again, I can't wait till we go back on these and see how many I got right, how many were just utter trash and never even like crawled out of the meta gutter. So in terms of Song of Tottentans, I think quite a lot of people have already caught on to this one. Just think about it for a second, okay? It's only 1 mana to start with, so even with like 6 mana on the board, which is easy, like easy. That point in the game where the opponents already hit you with the sweeper, and on their turn 5, now they're gonna pass the turn. It's gonna be your turn 6, and they've hit you with the Sunfall, and they've got the little incubator token, but they've got no mana left with which to activate it, and then you either top deck a Song of Tottentans or you specifically held one back, you play your land and you go X is 5, and now you add another 5 rats to the board with haste, get in for an additional 5 damage. Like, it's reminding me a little bit of Shivan Devastator in that sense, because it just costs 1 red and X, and you just the things that enter the battlefield immediately have haste and can attack. So I really like that for this rat deck, which I think, and I've mentioned this a few times in spoiler talk episodes, is gonna be the deck from the limited or draft archetypes that actually makes the leap to constructed as like a rat tribal, and it's going to be actually quite good. I hope that I'm right about this. There's enough rat support in the previous sets that when added to the strong rat cards from Wilds of Eldraine together, I think it's going to be particularly strong, and Song of Tottentans is a huge reason for that IMO. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled for Song of Tottentans, ladies and gents. Next up, the Mosswood Dread Knight. We're getting close to the top of the list. Woo! Jund midrange. Jund aggro. Golgari aggro. Golgari sacrifice graveyard shenanigans. Like, so many, this is basically, if you look at it sideways, just another copy of your Tenacious Underdog in your, like, aggressively slanted green-black X deck. Misa likey, a lottie. So, not only does it have trample, which is great, and there may be ways, in which we can, like, make it a bit more than a 3-2. But then, when it dies, you may cast it from your graveyard as an adventure until the end of your next turn. Okay? So, you just keep getting in, and it just keeps coming back. And it only costs 2 mana. And then you've got this adventure, you know, you draw a card and then you lose 1 life. That's also like just amazing. It's again reminding me of the Blitz, when you blitz in the Tenacious Underdog. It's doing a very much like a Golgari Tenacious Underdog impression here, but in a different way of play patterns. Like, I don't know, you play this out on 2, and you're already just happy. You know, you keep getting in for damage. You don't have to worry about holding up the mana this turn, because, you know, or you can hold it up as a blocker, then block, it dies, and it blocks fairly nicely with this 3 power, and then the next turn you just cast it again. Cast it again. This, and then the bit here that says you may cast it from your graveyard as an adventure. It's not referring to the Dread Whispers. It's referring to the Mosswood Dreadnought itself. This is the bit that like confuses me, because there'll be certain cards that say like, if you cast something from exile, da 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 da, and like stuff that are adventured go into the adventure zone, as it's called. They're actually in exile, right? So does that mean it'll trigger that stuff, that kind of thing? I think so. And so like that adds another layer to the complexity. Like I don't still see all of the moving parts, but just when you look at it at face value, like you can tell that this is going to be a broken card that needs to be figured out quickly. And I hope it, like, personally, I love Golgari. I know there's a lot of my subscribers that are with me on that. You know, this into Glissa, into Sheoldred, into, you know, it's the deck's been on the verge. The one that I like to call Dark Forest, where it's mostly like the good mono black cards peppered with, like, you know, you get to play your Terra Sunders and all my favorite stuff from the Golgari Light or Dark Forest, as I like to call it. You know, would benefit from having a card like this. So 2 thumbs up for Mosswood Dreadnought. Keep your eyes peeled. I believe this one is going to be quite relevant in the meta, and I would safely craft a few of them myself. On to the next one. No surprises over here. I almost lost my mind when I saw this card in during the initial spoilers. I raved on about it for quite some time, and everybody's catching on. I mean, it's definitely... I don't know if definitely, but like, if it's not first, it's second. The only other card that I can think of that's like vying with this is the Cruelty of Gix, because of its, you know, the tutor and the discard mode and all of that, and the fact that it's got reader heads. You can choose which mode you want to go for, but it's still like completely different in a way. But they're 2 reanimation spells that cost 5 mana. And I think when everything shakes out, this is going to end up being the de facto best reanimation spell in the format, period, paragraph. You know, I've already described in Spoiler Talk episodes many lines in which you can, you know, activate this a turn early. And the stuff that you're using to enable that is stuff that we can also sacrifice to this card, so that you can bring back potentially on turn 4 2 or 3 creatures like Atraxa, Atali, you name it, all of these busted reanimation targets that we have, from your graveyard to the battlefield at the same time. Ooh, I cannot wait to try that. It's going to be so broken. I think the reason why this is so, you know, it's the reason why they've reprinted Soul Guide Lantern, and we've got the Golgari creature land from the set. That, like, all of this like incidental graveyard hate. There's the Cauldron, the 2 mana Agatha's Cauldron. There's plenty of graveyard hate in the set alone, and we've already got, you know, Graveyard Trespasser, the Ouroboros Scavengers, and the list goes on and on. So like, I think they just were covering their bases to make sure that like a reanimation deck that brings back like an Atraxa and an Atali on turn 4 isn't like just going to completely dominate the meta, and like this is the reason why it might. So Lich Knight's Conquest coming up in position number. Ooh, we're almost at the top of the list. This is the 4th card, according to me. Please let me know in the comments what you think of my picks. But yeah, there's a card called like it's the Something Vault. It's a 2-mana artifact that you can pay 2, discard a card, draw a card, make a treasure. It's an artifact itself and makes another artifact. Here it says sacrifice any number of artifacts, enchantments, and or tokens. I'm even thinking of course, Big Score. I'm thinking of there's the why can I never remember the name of this card? 2 mana red enchantment. Bro gives haste. Images. Bitter Reunion. I never remember the name of this card. Bitter Reunion. When Bitter Reunion enters the battlefield, you may Oop, my face is probably covering this. Yeah. You may draw 2. You may discard a card if you do draw 2. It's an enchantment. It helps you discard your reanimation targets, and then you can sacrifice it to the Lich Knight's Conquest. So, like, yeah, guys, there's plenty of ways to do this, and keep your eyes peeled. Knight's Lich's Conquest, number 4 in my list. On to the next one. Decadent Dragon. I don't think this will catch anybody by surprise. It's like, again, just another attempt to like remake certain cards that were already broken and just like fix them a little bit so they're a little less broken, but still like really, really strong. This is kind of like a weird, again, if you squint sideways and you look at it closely, trying to be a Goldspan Dragon, but it doesn't have haste, right? So that's huge. But they put on the trample to like, here, we didn't give it haste, but now it's got the trample. I never figured out this thing of like flying and trample together. Like, it's such a weird, like, yes, I mean, there's going to be fairies, right? Lots of fairies. So maybe that's why. Trample's nice if in a meta where there's a lot of like potential flyers blocking. We haven't been in a meta like that in a while. Like, nowadays I'll put like 1 or 2 flyers in my deck just as a way to like get over and finish the game off in my aggro decks. Like, I'm thinking of Vindicator or your Steel Seraphs or your Shivan Devastators in mono red and mono white. Because most of the decks don't play any flyers. Like, honestly, like, I think the most played flyer in Standard right now is probably the little fairy guy from the world champion guy is printed on there, Utah. I think that's probably the flyer that you see most often on the other side of the board. Please correct me if I'm wrong. At some point there were some other things like here and there, but it's Atraxa and the fairy guy, the mastermind. This won't get through Trample and Atraxa, but still, like, cool. I've gone on too long of a tangent about the Frample here, but the point is, whenever it attacks, it makes a treasure, and that's where the similarities to Goldspan Dragon end. But the real reason why it's so high up on my list here is this expensive taste instant speed adventure for 3 mana. So I like these ones where they curve into each other, right? You hold up the 3 mana. At the end of the opponent's turn, you use expensive taste. You exile the top 2 cards of your target opponent's library face down. You may look and play those cards for as long as they remained exiled. So it's not like for as long as Decadent Dragon stays on the battlefield or any of these weird things. They're just like, now you can cast those cards for the rest of the game. Done. Just note that it doesn't say that you may spend mana as any color to cast those. No. Which is the reason behind the treasures. But, you know, considering like you're playing black and red just to have this card in your deck, and those are like most of the good cards in the format are in those colors, like, there's a good chance that you'll be able to cast them anyway. And I'm actually thinking that this is going to be going into a Grixis deck where you also play like Siphoning Insight and all of these other like yoink cards where you're stealing the opponent's stuff. And the fact that then you also just get to have like a 4/4 Frampler that makes treasures. to help you cast the spells in case you go against the, you know, different color combinations from the ones you're playing. Just makes this card like a really tidy little package that I think is going to, yeah, warp the meta around it. And I cannot wait to see whether I'm right or wrong. And I kind of hope it does, because I really like the flavor, everything about it. Like, the play pattern's going to be fun, like in some sort of like slightly more creature-based, controlling, I don't know, mid-rangey, creature-based controlling mid-range deck that, yeah, may or may not emerge from the meta. So stay tuned. Decadent Dragon, number 3 on my list. Getting close to the top position. On to the next one, of course, the Iron Crag. This one is definitely, like, I don't even want to hear it in terms of, like, ooh, it's not as broken as you think it is. It's me. Like, this card should have probably just been number 1. And it's not like that, like, immediate, like, type of thing, like, I don't know, an Atraxa, you know, where, like, oh, you just play it and the game ends kind of thing. This is on the second position on my list because this is going to go in freaking every deck. Like, almost this, like, it's going to be everywhere. You're going to see it all the time. This is going to be absolutely everywhere for so many reasons. Like, it'll take a video of its own just to get through all of them. But most importantly, it's a 2-mana rock. Right? But then, you know, it's an artifact, so you can bargain it, maybe. It's, you know, it's a really good card. Let me just leave it at that, okay? I hope that my viewers and subscribers, you know, have enough experience in the game, and I attract, I think, from the type of videos that I put up, like less of a beginner crowd and just more of like other brewers that are trying to get ideas. So, you know, you are my people. And I know that you know why this is in second place on the list. It's going to be everywhere. And you will see this in every, it's gonna be like kind of like a bank buster, because it's colorless. There's no like cost. You can put it into any deck and it's gonna just make it better. So the Iron Crag, get ready. It's gonna be all over the place. And now, drum roll. Top number 1 position on my list, IMO. Talking about that Grixis deck that I was just talking about with the dragon. Maybe not in the very same deck, but I think Grixis is about to come back in a significant way, even though it has very little ways of dealing with enchantments. And this deck, this set and the meta right now has a lot of enchantment stuff going on. I still think that there's going to be a really nice Grixis deck, and it's going to look nothing like the most recent, like, top tier Grixis deck with the, you know, 4 copies of Invoke Despair. It's going to still have Sheoldreds and whatnot, but it's going to take a slightly different approach to winning the game. You probably won't be seeing any more Corpse Appraisers, thank God, and, you know, turn to freaking Blood-Tithe Harvesters, but you're going to be seeing this card in it. My number 1 pick for best card of the set is the Apprentice's Folly, guys. The fact that it's an enchantment and you can bargain it away before the final trigger hits, and the fact that you can copy your Sheoldred or your freaking what, like, you know, you can make 2 copies of you know, the most busted creatures on your table. They're no longer legendaries. You can have multiple Sheoldreds on the board, and then you know, bargain away the Apprentice's Folly before the final trigger hits, so you don't sacrifice them and you get to keep them. Means the number of shenanigans with this card are going to be just endless. And you know, Sheoldreds Deluxe. I've seen a few deck lists already in people's Theorycraft, you know, deck dumps on Twitter. They're talking about there's especially Saffron Olive. He named the deck Oops All Sheoldreds. Let me see if I can't just quickly get it up on screen here for you guys, because I was a little bit worried, honestly, when I first saw this, and that worry hasn't like left in any way. Copy image. Can I do this? I'm gonna drag it, bring it here, and I'll put it here. Is it gonna work? Yay! Here we go. Whoops! All Sheoldreds. This is a deck list from Saffron Olive over there at MTG Goldfish. So, like 4 Sheoldreds, the Iron Crag, of course, the Apprentice's Folly. There's this Beseech the Mirror. I know the quality isn't so good here because it's a small screenshot, but this brings back Sheoldred. This finds the... Yeah, oh my goodness. I copy 2 times. I reanimate. I copy. I say... Grixis whoops all Sheoldreds. That's just one good use case for the Apprentice's Folly, like, you know, and that's very initial, like, theory crafting from Saffron Olive. I myself already have a few ideas, which I'm gonna keep, you know, for a future video. I don't want to give too much away now because you guys are just gonna have to stay tuned. But yeah, guys, that is my top 10 list for Wilds of Eldraine. I hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know down there in the comments what you thought of my picks. Would you have picked other things that I missed? Some obviously broken cards that should have made the list. You know, that sort of thing. Please sound off down there in the comments. But that is going to be it for tonight's footage. Thank you so much for watching. As always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I will see you during early access. And until then, this is Lone Fox from the BrewLab signing out. Peace, y'all.